Hello, welcome back to Madrona's Pulse Teachings. I am Iris, and we are gonna begin chatting about Pluto in Aquarius. Now, we have already worked with Pluto in Aquarius. We had a little taste of it in 2023. We spent January of 2024 to September with Pluto in Aquarius. Then 2024, September into November brought us into this last dip of Pluto in Capricorn, and it has been real. And now, November 19th, Pluto enters into Aquarius. So I am uploading this before that entrance has happened, a few days before. There could be events that have happened since I've made this. So you could be watching it with Pluto in Capricorn. You could be watching it with Pluto in Aquarius. And here I am just going to talk generally about some of the themes that we are working with, that we're opening to, that we are co-creating with as this major shift happens. I will do another video that is going to speak specifically to the themes of Pluto in Aquarius through the houses that will support you kind of working with your own natal chart. Here I really just want to talk about Pluto, transiting Pluto in Aquarius, especially, not from any perspective of prediction, not from any perspective of control. Sometimes if we're using something like astrology to predict, then we can consciously or unconsciously be driven by fear and be driven by kind of a drive to control, which is usually driven by fear, versus being on a journey of co-creative exploration and discovery and allowing the stories to change. Because, my own personal belief in working with astrology is that the stories do change. And especially when we are talking about Aquarian energy, we are talking about timelines and different possibilities. And we're talking about timeline shifts. And when timeline shifts change in our own personal life, our stories in our life change. And so with Pluto, transiting Pluto, we're talking simultaneously always about, the energies that are in the archetypes that are coming up for us on our individual journeys, okay? And for the collective and the various collectives that we are all part of. And with with an outer transiting planet, we can't separate that kind of collective social element, what in social theory we call the macro level, from the micro level, which is our very embodied, personal, subjective journey. And they're both very important. Now, what sometimes gets left out when we're talking about the collective of a transit is forgetting that collective is made up of all of us individuals. And so this is where, certain uses of astrology can get problematic, because we are not all here desiring to be the most spiritually aligned, wakeful person that we can be. We might believe that on a soul level we are, right? But there is a difference between soul consciousness and the waking consciousness in this human journey, and ego consciousness. And they are different levels and different experiences, and they are complicated and they are related to each other, but they are not the same expression. And so in this human journey that we're in, we are constantly coming into new awakenings. And awakenings is a word associated with Aquarius. Aquarius energy is about awakening. It is about evolutionary impulses and intents. It is about the spark of creative genius in an air type of way, which is different than a water way, which is different than an earth way, which is different than a fire way, in the plane of intellect, in the plane of visionary ideas of how evolution and progressive collective growth can occur. And Aquarius energy is complicated. I say this a lot because it simultaneously is about that collective growth and that collective energy. It is individuals wanting to find their pod of like-minded souls and like-minded minds, and kind of like, oh, the intoxicating allure when you're in that intellectual plane and you're with someone and they can meet you and you can go into those visionary places. It's beautiful. And if you have a ton of Aquarius energy in your chart, it can kind of also cause problems, because we can literally forget to eat, or we can forget we have a body, or we can forget that other people have emotions and they don't just want to be in the intellectual plane, right? But Aquarius energy is in the intellectual visionary plane. It is higher mind. It is awakening. And it is doing that, yes, for the collective, but also on our own individuating path. And that's where oftentimes unconsciously that kind of association that we make with Aquarius energy, which is about the individual, it's that authenticity, that kind of rebellious genius that's very individual. It wants to be evolving from that perspective that I kind of mentioned earlier, that as we all evolve, then the collective evolves, right? But when the Aquarius individual wants to evolve and the collective that it's part of does not want to evolve, that can create a lot of tension, that can create a lot of issues, that can create violence, that can create a lot of things. And usually, especially in like a micro level, the Aquarius individual ends up leaving that group, and they're who's right, who's wrong. We're on different soul journeys. We have different paths. We have different needs at particular moments, right? And so this is where really working with astrology is pretty messy. Working with the collective and the way that it's made up of individuals is pretty messy. And so Pluto in Aquarius, going to be a little messy. And ultimately, Pluto switching into Aquarius, 20 years, okay, of soul evolution, soul desire for evolution, for also healing and empowerment along these themes of awakening, awareness, connectivity, the micro and the macro, having to learn new ways of doing this human thing. Now, transiting Pluto is literally the collective soul, okay? And just saying that, if we're talking about the collective soul, that's going to manifest in this plane differently in different cultures with different themes. We are further into this age of globalization, and so that's also part of Aquarian energy. And so the way that Pluto, we can't just make like one simple grand sweeping claim about Pluto and Aquarius, because we have different collectives and we have different stages of evolution within those collectives. And yet there is this drive for evolution and awakening. Aquarius is also, because it's for that evolution, and it is the collective, and it is also, usually it has a component of service for that collective. It does usually want to bring in new paradigms of justice, new paradigms of social organization. They ultimately want to be something that can be aligned to higher self, to higher mind, to the implicit understanding that we are all connected, regardless of those different cultural manifestations, regardless of those different stages of awakening. We are all part of a collective net, and we are not separate, and we are not better than one another. And that is part of the Aquarius understanding, is that we are not better than one another. And yet we find ourselves all in different stages, and therefore we have different needs and different desires and different soul trajectories. And when Pluto moves into a sign, Pluto's drive is to evolve. And the way that happens, evolve is also healing. And when we want to heal something deep, and Pluto is as deep as it literally gets in the archetypes, like it's as deep as it gets. it needs to be exposed in order to heal. It needs to be exposed and witnessed and seen. And then we get to make choices. Do we do the work of allowing what is here to be seen in my own self, in my own journey, so that I can heal it, and those parts of myself that I might have been trying to disown or I might have been taught to hold shame for and therefore didn't want to see, I can say, oh, it's here. Oh, it's actually me. Oh, okay, I love me. I might not have been proud about everything, but it's me. And if I want to move as an integrated whole self, I accept it. This is what Pluto in our natal chart, we're on a soul journey learning to do this. And transiting Pluto brings it into our role with that Pluto drive for our own lives. So this is an Aquarius. And as that simultaneously also impacts collectives. And so as we make this shift, what is being exposed? What are we seeing? What are we seeing? You know, Pluto is concerned with power. Pluto is concerned, you know, in the Plutonic experience, there is just power. And there is a desire to heal and be empowered from a disempowered place. There is a desire to experientially understand what that sweet spot of intimate relating without manipulation is like, what it feels like. Imagine actually having that in a social organization. Imagine having a social organization with no manipulation. Imagine it. Where we're not having to present ourselves in a particular way so that we can get one up, so that we can achieve that status. And we don't need to look at government for that. Think about any professional workplace. Think about any institution. Imagine where we're actually just working from a place of embodied, honored intimacy because we recognize that we're all equal, right? There is a lot of rhetoric around that, especially in this social media day and age that has brought social injustices into the public consciousness in a way that it wasn't present before social media. And social media is part of a profit industry that seeks one and one thing only, which is profit. In any mainstream media industry uses a lot of rhetoric around many different issues without actually doing any of the work of changing. And Pluto requires that we change our consciousness. Pluto in Aquarius wants a massive consciousness shift into experiences that we have not had before, like literally haven't had before. And so that's why part of working with Pluto in Aquarius is doing our own work of wakefulness, our own work of meditation, our own work of accessing the higher mind self, of feeling our own call for evolution within our own lives in the way that it does help us find our pod, in the way that it does help us connect into those communities. Communities where real healing and radical change happens. It's always the grassroots activists, right? It's always the grassroots activists. They are the ones that have been saying things that then one person gets famous for, and like it's like someone just came up with these ideas. It's like, nah, those feminist grassroots folks, they've been doing it for decades. They're going to keep doing it for decades. They're not doing it to seek glory. They're doing it to seek radical change, right? And how can we bring that spirit into our own life? Because we are entering a new age in an immediate sense and in a much bigger sense that is way beyond any of those of us who are alive at this time, right? And there isn't really predicting. You know, we can and we will, and I will talk about technology, talk about the media. These are themes that align with Aquarius. Technology is part of Aquarius. And there, as is mindfulness, as is understanding the mediums and the technologies that we are using and the implications and the impact that they have, right? I've seen some folks being like, Pluto in Aquarius is wonderful because it's the last time we had it was Industrial Revolution, and this then means that we're just going to have a wonderful, expansiveness of our technological innovation. And yeah, we're going to see a lot of technological innovation. The Industrial Revolution is also directly related to climate crisis. It, from a social media history perspective, facilitated a lot of injustice. There's never one simple narrative. And we need to move into this particular rise of innovation with a lot of mindfulness. And media literacy is not something that is taught. It is not something that is taught in schools. It is not something that is taught widely to the public. And media literacy is, the new form of essential critical thinking. And this goes far beyond news outlets. This goes into the entertainment that we consume. It goes into the reels that we consume. It goes into the people that we listen to. It goes into the complicated ways of is this information, is it grounded in experience? Is it grounded in thoughtfulness? Is it grounded in someone that has spent decades with this topic, decades with self-reflection? Or it is someone that knows how to use technology really well and can present as if they were an expert? And we're going to see so much more of that. We're going to see a lot. It's going to be messy, right? And all the more reason that we have with Pluto and Aquarius a drive to become incredibly mindful of our own awakening journey. And that is a soul directive. And probably that one sentence that I could have just said could summarize this entire video, because that is what it's really asking us to do. And that's why I'm going to make a video of Pluto through the houses in Aquarius, so you can kind of just have some little food for thought as we journey through this. But I think especially with Pluto and Aquarius, it's really important to just keep checking in, and to keep checking in and seeing how paradigms are shifting in all different ways, because it is a shifting mosaic. And not getting, easier said than done, not getting too attached to the story of what that mosaic looks like at one particular time. Because Aquarian energy knows that there are other timelines. And the thing about a timeline shift in our own soul journey is it's radical. And sometimes it comes from us doing really challenging, reflective work and getting into that place where we make a choice and we go down a different path. I had a Buddhist teacher that once described our journeys as, it's like we see the one-way sign, we see that it's actually a dead end, and we keep going down that road hoping that it's not going to be a dead end, even though we saw the sign that it's going to be a dead end. Right? And the timeline shift sometimes is when we choose not to go down that road. And yet I think it's also very important there to acknowledge that every time that we go down that road, it is a different journey. And we are embodying different experiences, and we are learning. And especially when we take our focus off of the goal of getting somewhere, it's just as important to allow ourselves the time we need going down that road, because every time we walk down it, it is different weather. It is a different ecosystem. There are different people showing up, and we have a lot of beautiful experiences in the moment. And yet there might be a longing, a soul longing to go down a different road. And Pluto and Aquarius knows about so many different roads. And we're going to see massive timeline shifts for our own individual lives and in the collective. And, it's going to be challenging. I think we already have a taste of that. And this is where it's really important, when we're working with the outer planets, whether it's Uranus or Pluto or Neptune, they do not work with categories of good and bad. They work with the evolution intent of that archetypal drive. And for Pluto, it's transformation. And remember that Pluto is about death and rebirth. Okay? Death and rebirth in time scenarios that are way beyond one human life, and yet this one human life is what we have right now. And so it's also just so important to honor the journey and honor the work and honor the challenges and try and not get stuck in binaries of good and bad. And the way that we get out of those is coming into that power of the present moment. And that is part of the meditative insight that when we come into that place, helps us connect to higher mind, which is where Aquarius gets its visionary seeds, is from higher mind self. And so there's such an opportunity for that connection and the places it can take us. And I'm going to stop here before I go on for another 20 minutes, because we'll just have more opportunity for more videos. I'm sending a lot of love to the shifting tide lines of consciousness that we are all journeying through, and I will see you soon. Be well.